What's up, summoners? King Blair here. Today we're going to be talking about RTA tricks and tips that I can give you guys to help you climb, especially with RTA being so close to ending. And if you want that skin, you need to reach master level. It is so important that you know what you're doing when you're queuing up, because you don't have that much time to reach that. So I'm going to give you tricks as a mid-tier champion player on what I did and how I did it and the things that I use day to day in RTA. So if you like the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the Discord link. Y'all been doing amazing on all of these, and I can't show you guys how much I appreciate it. Sorry, I stumbled on my words, which is why on the community tab I do have the voting, but it is the last day for that voting, so make sure that you vote for the unit you want to see, because after tomorrow, when the week resets and I wake up in the morning, so 12 hours from now, I will be thinking, what was the unit with the highest votes? And that unit will get it. Right now, Melissa is at the front, sitting at a pretty comfortable lead, so most likely she will get it, and I will be mulliganing her skill 3, which is one of the reasons I have to end the voting tomorrow, because I also want to try different builds on her as we go. This build is a standalone build, and I'll most likely talk about it if she gets it. So this is her standalone build to counter Emerald Violet, and I've had fun with it. It works really well with Emerald Violet, but kind of puts her in a spot where she's only good at doing that. So I will also be doing her damage build paired with an Oxlots, which I think is honestly going to be much better, especially for Guild Wars. So definitely keep in touch for that. For the Assassin Kali, she has been upgraded from my previous version, so make sure if you want to see her, vote for her. One of the things that I see a lot of people commenting and asking me is for Assassin Kali, even if she doesn't get it, and Apocalypse Robbie as well, because they were other two that were really close, and right now are right there. Unless y'all do something crazy, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Melissa, but if you want to see Apocalypse Robbie and Assassin Kali, I will be showing them more in like fights, in different arena battles, and yes, they will get a full guide in the future. If you ever have any questions, that's why the Discord link is there. If you want tips or tricks on your units, I can tell you guys that. So yeah, but that's enough about the channel. Let's move on to the actual concepts and how the video will play out. So initially, I had intended to put a concept with one of my RTA fights, but I felt that it was too confusing, and I'd rather you guys be focusing on what I say, because I feel like if I'm trying to show the concept as the arena fight goes on, it wouldn't be that great. So I decided just to stick with the concepts. Also, the video was pushing like 30 minutes when I was doing editing. I was like, oh, they're not gonna watch that, and they need to watch it because it's super important. So it will just be the concepts, and it's going to be 4 concepts, 1 concept which is non-RTA related, and 3 which are battle related that can actually help you right now in your battles. So yeah, without further ado, let's just jump right into them. The very first tip is going to be the non-battle related tip. That is going to be to stay positive. Y'all, there is only 3 days left before the new season, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't know if you need to hear this from me or from someone else, but you are going to lose a lot of your battles to RNG and things out of your control. For me, most of my losses, like probably 20% plus, are from RNG. And I can tell you there's days where I lose an RTA fight, 1, and I get tilted for the rest of the day. I don't play any more Epic 7, or if I keep playing, I make bad decisions because I am tilted. And I've talked about it before, but keeping a positive mind is one of the most important things to climb in RTA, because I really believe that everyone can get to master as long as they're, especially if you're challenger in arena, you should be able to reach master. But the biggest thing is keeping a positive mind, because if you make misplays, that will stop you from climbing. Yes, there's things where if you're very early in the game and don't have the right units, you won't be able to climb as much, but keeping a positive mind is one thing that will stop you from getting it to masters, especially if you have the units, especially because you only have 3 days. So the biggest tip I can give you, stay positive. When you're doing your RTA fights, relax, grab a soda, kick your feet up on the couch, play your favorite music. You need to relax for your RTA fights, because I'm going to tell y'all it's going to be a climb, but it will be worth it when you get there. So make sure you stay positive. Now for the first combat tip is going to be know your weaknesses. This extends beyond just the fights, but also the team building and unit building aspect. So for me, I know who my stronger units are, and everyone knows before you enter an RTA fight, you already know what strategy you're picking, you already know what units you're trying to use. So for me, I know Kayron, Spectre T, and Assassin Kali are my biggest units. And you know who they all lose to really freaking hard? Seaside Bellona. So that pre-ban stage, I can already pre-ban Seaside and put me in an advantageous position to win the fight. And I feel like so many people, especially below Masters, don't know their weaknesses to their teams and waste their pre-ban. Just because you don't like Arbiter Vildred doesn't mean that it's a good pre-ban for you. There's no reason for you to ban Arbiter Vildred if you're already going to run a Cleave team with like a really good BBK or a Sangelica. Why are you banning Arbiter Vildred? It doesn't make sense. So know your weaknesses. Don't waste your pre-ban on something you don't know. The other thing that it extends to is team building, because you know I lose to Seaside, but there's also Dizzy and there's also a lot of other units that can mess up my day. So how do I counter them? Especially Dizzy, because I see her everywhere. I built my Charles, and that's why you see the Charles there, is because they picked Dizzy, and a lot of times there's other units I want to ban in their team that hurt them more. So I know I need to ban that I need to ban those units, and I need to counter the Dizzy. So I have my Charles to counter that, and to counter the Kral and all these other units, and put them at a worse spot. So building units to also cover your defenses is very, very good. It's the same reason why I also build my DJ Bazaar, and my Champ C is for Dizzies, and the Charles is also because when I first picked Kayron, people start building their team with water units like Diani, Kral, Elena. So I picked Charles, and they're like, oh shoot, now they lost the ban. So it's putting them in a really disadvantageous position when you cover your weaknesses well. If I had an Alencia, you know I'd be putting Alencia as well to cover Kayron's weaknesses. So knowing your weakness is very, very important. Some quick tips for some teams if you don't know your team composition as well right now. Tank teams that rely on buffs like Diani, Kral teams, you need to be pre-banning Bazaar, because that is probably going to be your hardest counter. You don't want to have to waste your ban on Bazaar, because you need to mess up your opponent, not try to protect yourself. So banning Bazaar is so pivotal when you're building very buff heavy teams. Also, Dizzy is also a really good choice, because Dizzy with Lela Violin is able to strip those buffs, is able to stun and make your buffs not as good. The other one is for Cleave teams. Cleave teams, or if you're using Athletica, you need to be banning Kayron, because Kayron can come back and kill your whole team. RB is an okay option. If you don't have any Cleaves that can counter RB, then that's okay. But usually Kayron and Fallen Cecilia are your worst enemies. If you're playing just a wall comp with Kral, MO Violet, Rella Light, and Fallen CC, you need to be banning the Spectre T, or similar to the buffs, Bazaar. But usually Spectre T is a very high damage unit that a lot of people have to cleave through your tank. So you need to know that your weakness is high DPS units that can make consistent damage that you may not be able to kill. So that's your counter. And then for mixed comps like Bruiser comps, there is like Fallen Litica and Oxalots are one of your worst matchups, because you can get cleaved very easily if you're running a Bruce comp. So make sure that you ban that. So that's just general weaknesses. This can vary unit to unit, player to player, but that's a general guideline to help you start thinking about your weaknesses. The next idea I'm going to be talking to you guys about is informing yourself about your opponent and keeping information to yourself. So this is really, really important. It's information gathering that is so important in RTA, because there are so many context clues that tell you what they're going to pick, and if you pick on them early and you're able to draft a team that can destroy the other team, you're going to win so many fights, because they won't be able to deal with all the different counters you're putting, and your team is going to just make more sense. And knowing that is really, really important. One of the best and worst examples of this is the icon. So you see on the top left, way too many people like putting really good units on there that they're actually going to use. Like for me, I should not put my Kayron. If I want to use my Kayron, I should not put it up there, because if a Cleave team player sees my Kayron, they're going to ban my Kayron. They're going to ban the Kayron because they know I have the Kayron, and they're going to ban it because they don't want to see it. So don't give them that information. What you should give them is misinformation, which is why the icon is also one of those tricky things, because I put ML Haste on there, but that's because I want them to know that I have ML Haste, because if they're trying to pick Arbiter Vildred, I want them to really have to think about Arbiter Vildred, because they either have to pick ML Haste for themselves and waste a pick, or they have to ban ML Haste, or they have to waste a ban on ML Haste. And that's a situation that they don't want to be in. And taking risks oftentimes leads to losses. So already putting that icon on there pressures Arbiter Vildred players to decide if they really want to put the Arbiter Vildred. The other way that can help you is you can put your ML Haste there, so they decide, maybe I'll pick Arbiter Vildred later in my draft, and you get to pick Arbiter Vildred for yourself if you have them. So that's the type of information gathering that you want to start doing on the icon. The next part is first and second picks. Y'all, this is probably the most important pick in the whole fight. Fights are often determined by the third pick, if it's all gear equal. By the third pick, I already know if I'm going to win the fight or not. Why? Because a lot of people know how to draft really well. A lot of people draft really, really bad, especially for first pick. What you want to do for yourself to withhold information from your opponent is pick team neutral units as your first and second pick, or units that will help you counter that. So for first pick, so let's assume you get first pick. What unit are you going to first pick? This is the best place to put team neutral units. Alencia, a lot of players first pick Alencia. One, because she's highly coveted. Two, because she fits into bruiser teams, she fits into aggro teams, she fits into tank teams. So you have no information. You have no idea what other units they're going to go with. You have no idea. They could even end up going for a cleave because they can strip with Alencia. And you don't know that. They're putting you in a scenario where you don't know what exactly they're going to do. This is the same thing that if you pick Fallen Cecilia, because Fallen Cecilia goes into tank teams, goes into cleave teams, goes into bruiser teams, she goes everywhere. So picking a Fallen Cecilia is really strong, and she's also a neutral unit. For me, for Charon, why do I first pick Charon? One, it's a unit I need to have because it's pivotal to a lot of my teams, and a lot of my units struggle with it. So it's covering my weaknesses and I grabbing my strength. But he's also a very neutral unit. He can go into a bruiser team or he can go into a speed team. People don't know how I have him built. And if they start thinking or they start going to ban my Charon to try to beat my Charon, that's me giving them misinformation, because then I can just go straight and pick Charles, pick Alencia, pick a bunch of units that can counter all their water units, and they're put in a terrible position. So overextending and making your opponent overextend is really, really good, which is why Charon is so good. People will pick Dizzy like this when they see Charon, and then you can just pick Champ C. So that's why first picks are so important. You want to give information to your opponent that you want them to think or you don't want them to think. So misinformation and knowing information. On the other side, if they get first pick and you get the next two picks, you want to make it so you know what they're picking. Whenever I see someone first pick Crawl, right off the bat, I know they're going for a tank team, because Crawl doesn't fit that well into other types of teams. So I will almost always pick my Spectre Tenebria in that situation. Why? One, because I already know it's going to counter them, and most of the times it ends up happening. There are some cases where they switch their draft completely, but I typically will pick my Spectre Tenebria in that second slot. And then the other thing that I do at that scenario, it also helps me, for the Spectre Tenebria, because it keeps that Spectre Tenebria from them, because a lot of tank teams rely on 1 to 2 units to be in the background doing damage. Spectre T being a really popular option, I take that away from them. I put them in a really bad situation. So that's why it's so important. Pay attention to your fights, pay attention to the first picks. I can't tell you, stress how important it is to pick on these clues, because so many people will just go through the draft and just go through, like, I remember when I was playing Masters, draft picks would take like 10 seconds because the other opponent is like playing with himself. He's just picking his units that he's like, oh, I like this unit, I like this unit, I like this unit, and this is the team I'm going to use to climb all the way to Champ Masters. That's not gonna work, because if you're just picking the team that you think is going to win, you're going to lose so many times by people that are picking up on your cues, countering your units, and outpicking you and picking a better team than you. So make sure you are informed. It's so important to be informed in fights and pick up on all of these cues. The last trick and tip that I can give you guys is going to be assume the worst is going to happen. So I mentioned before, when you pick ban, you kind of have an idea what they're picking from the first, second, third pick, and you have to decide what you want to pick, what you don't want to pick. But the biggest thing is you have to assume everything's going to go wrong. Whenever I go into a RTA, I assume my opponent has godlike units, godlike gear, all the units in the game. Why do I make those assumptions? I know it's not true, but why do I always assume everything will go wrong? It's because it makes me make better decisions, especially at the ban phase. So one of the biggest things is whenever you fill out your slots with the 5 heroes, you know the 5 heroes that they have, you know the 5 heroes that you have. If you assume the worst, you will always pick the right unit to ban. So for example, if I have Spectre Tenebria and my opponent has Ammo Ken and there's no other counter that I have to his Ammo Ken, I have to ban his Ammo Ken. Why? Because if I don't, and he bans my Spectre Tenebria, I lose the fight. And that's just, you don't want to have that dynamic. You don't want to be in a situation where you lose before you even get into the fight. So that's one place where assuming the worst will happen will help you. Another scenario of this is if they have a Dizzy and you have no immunity, you have no way to put up immunity, you have no way to cleanse. Let's say you only have your Lilias. You have to assume that their Dizzy is going to be slightly slower than your Lilias and go right after her and counterattack every single time. So do you ban the Dizzy? You have no other way to deal with it beside your Lilias. That becomes, you have to assume the worst. She's going to land it every single time. I have to ban the Dizzy, because then if she bans your Lilias, then you lose. So it puts you in a scenario where assuming the worst helps you get better decision. Same thing with Charles. Every time someone picks a Charles, I stop picking Assassin Kali. I used to pick Assassin Kali against Charles. I stopped. Why? Because almost all my losses that are against Charles are because he counterattacks on the first freaking turn. Why? Because that's just how this game is. Because if he counterattacks my Assassin Kali, I just lose. Had he not counterattacked, I win. But I don't want to leave it to RNG. I don't want to ever have a fight that's determined strictly by RNG. It's not fun. So try to limit those scenarios by assuming the worst is going to happen, making decisions based on worst case scenarios, and picking units based on worst case scenarios. So that's the tricks that I can give you there. So in conclusion, there's only 3 days left, and using these tips may or may not get you all the way to Masters, but over time, it will make you better players. With keeping a positive player attitude, like we mentioned in another video, to knowing your weaknesses, which is one of the biggest things, to know whether or not you're going to be able to win a fight, know what units you have to build, know what units you have to ban, to getting information from your opponent. People already have an idea in their head. People will slip up and pick like an Athletica and give away that they're cleaving you. So if someone first picks an Athletica, you should never lose that fight because you know they're going for a cleave. You need to know that. Because if you see an Athletica first pick, start picking General Purgus, start picking your Idol's Cheers, start preparing for a cleave because they just gave you way too much information. Bazaar, not as much information. The other one, the last concept that I talked about, assume the worst. Assume they're going to get every debuff, assume they're going to get every strip, assume they're going to get every counterattack. Because if you don't do that, you're going to always be making very risky decisions. You're going to be overextending, and it's going to put you in very bad scenarios. So I hope those tips helped you guys. If you liked the video, make sure you leave a like. I mentioned that before. But thank you so much, and good luck to everybody. On Wednesday, I want to see everyone be like, oh, I made it to Masters. It was easy mode. So I hope I get to see that from everyone. But yeah, I look forward to it. There will be no video tomorrow on Monday for RTA. I just didn't have enough time, and I had a lot of stuff to take care of. But videos will be back on Tuesday. But that is all I have for you guys today, and I will see y'all next time. Peace.